I, with colleagues, met with President Trump to discuss international priorities as part of the G7, but also to further negotiate a new economic and security partnership between Canada and the United States. And as we've said repeatedly, we'll take all the time we need to get the best deal for Canada, but no longer. And seeing progress that's been made, President Trump and I agreed to pursue negotiations towards a deal within the coming 30 days. We'll continue these negotiations, of course, in good faith. In parallel, we must reinforce our strength at home and safeguard Canadian workers and businesses from the unjust U.S. tariffs that exist at present. And that's why we're announcing that Canada will be introducing a series of countermeasures to protect Canadian steel and aluminum workers and producers.
Okay, Mark Carney, a couple of different takes there. Yes, we'll get that deal done in 30 days, but in the meantime, because we're not really sure we trust them, we're going to put steel and aluminum tariffs on as countermeasures. But that more in a sec. Scott Reid's on the line, CTV political analyst, former advisor to Prime Minister Paul Martin, and our feature is brought to you, of course, by the folks at Guaranteed Industries, reminding you with the warmest summer on record being predicted here, it's time to call your air conditioning specialists at Guaranteed and make sure your system's up to it. So give them a call, 514-342-3400. That's Guaranteed Industries and Canair, serving Montrealers since 1957. Scott, your take on what you just heard from Mark Carney. On the one hand, we're still talking. We still have that 30-day window. On the other hand, yeah, here come the tariffs, the counter tariffs.
Yeah, I think it makes a certain sense, almost strictly through a negotiation lens. I sort of look at this as putting the pistol on the table and saying, yeah, we've been having talks, but, you, President Trump, you're focused on Iran and Israel, you're focused on this, you're focused on that, but we want to get this thing done. We want to get it done in 3 weeks, and so we've held our powder on these measures against steel and aluminum, but we've seen the Chinese dumping a ton of steel into Canada. We've seen those industries and those jobs under threat. So we're putting the pistol on the table and just saying, if we can't get a deal, well, then we're going to take action. So it seems to me that adds like a little bit of tension, as negotiators say, to those discussions. Hopefully that's helpful. And I do think the measures with respect to the China matter, if these measures were, by the way, implemented, one thing I think that people have overlooked is what they call the procurement rules. So if you were to say, if they followed through on what he articulated today, if 3 weeks from now there's no deal and the government brings the hammer down, well, that would mean that U.S. firms, of which most of the brands that we know are U.S. firms, would not be able to compete on major defense contracts, major IT procurements and projects. Like it would be a big deal. There's real money there. That would cause disruption. And so that would be one thing I would watch for. My gut is this is really just to try to accelerate and intensify the likelihood of successful negotiations by showing a little flash of strength.
So, I have the sense here that ever since Donald Trump left the G7 meetings, because obviously this Iran-Israel situation, it has to take precedent, he kind of forgot about, or is forgetting about Canada. And I realize there's an entire economic team negotiating a deal here, but do you think we're kind of not top of mind anymore?
I don't know. It's hard for me to read that. You might interpret it that way. On the other hand, we don't have a look into what's really going on. I mean, there are reports, and today that the Prime Minister and the President are talking quite a bit. Today, the Prime Minister was sort of asked about that, and he said, we speak quite frequently. So it's, and Dominic LeBlanc was talking about how he's doing constant shuttle diplomacy with the Commerce Secretary. So I know that when you work for a G7 leader, much less the President of the United States, much less when you are the President of the United States, a big part of that job is you got to do more than one thing at once.
Right.
So I'm not 100% convinced. I also think that one of the unreported trends of the past 2 months is that Donald Trump actually is backing away from his tariff agenda. And people talk about the taco, but beyond the taco, I actually think there's a clear trend. Like, he got a framework deal with the United Kingdom on trade. Then he got a framework deal, a little bit more vague, that one, but still some framework deal with China. Now we're in negotiations. Felt like we could have been days away. I'm still not convinced we won't get this thing done the next 2 weeks. So it feels to me like he's trying to retreat from that tariff thing, waves tariffs around as an incentive, as a threat, but I think he's in the business of trying to settle this stuff because he doesn't like taking angry calls from powerful business people in the United States or watching the markets move.
But can I just ask you, with respect, I brought up Iran and Israel and the situation, and it seems to be for Canadians who are there, at least the ones in Israel right now, the face that Anita Anand is putting on this when she tweeted out this morning that our embassies or consulates there are all over this. Everything we're hearing from people there is that Canada is not doing much of a job here as well. Have you heard anything about this? And why isn't Global Affairs kind of straightening this out or trying to?
Well, to be honest with you, I always have a lot of sympathy no matter what the stripe of the government when something like this happens. And no matter who the government is, whether it's Canada, UK, others, this happens. Because you can have consular services. Those people I guarantee they're working around the clock. The people in our posts there, our embassies and our consulates. But it's not safe, man. And it's very difficult. There's no way to get out. I had a friend who was going to Israel and was determined to go, was scheduled to go this week. And, they were basically just begged by Global Affairs saying, look, we have no way to guarantee your safety. There is no way to secure your ability to return. There are very few options globally of transport mechanisms to get you in and out, airlines, boats, and so I think it is the art of the possible. We should criticize and we should nag and we should bug because people with a Canadian passport, we should be doing everything to get them out of there if they want to get out of there. But there are bombs flying, man. This is hard.
I appreciate there are bombs flying, as you said. I think back, though, because when we had Adrian Gobriel, the CTV reporter, on this story earlier on, and you hearken back to the October 7th attacks, and the same thing was happening. Canadians in Israel calling the consulate or the embassy, whatever, and basically being told, our offices are open from 9 to 5, please call again. That kind of stuff, which happened then, you think could have been straightened out, not that anyone could have anticipated exactly when this happened. It does not appear to have changed. And I don't mean to criticize the staff, but you have to be prepared.
I don't believe that. This stuff gets repeated and Facebooked and all that stuff. Those consulates, in my experience, from when I was in government and watching other governments since, I know anecdotes like that get passed around. Those guys are working around the clock, and people are not getting an answering machine, and they're not getting a high hand. They may not be able to get safe leave out of the country right now because that's not possible. But I don't really believe that the systemic response is, write your congressman. I don't think that's what's happening.
Okay. Let me ask you one other thing today with respect to the Competition Bureau coming out and suggesting we need a little bit more competition as far as our airlines in this country are concerned, and what you think about that.
Well, this is always the tough Canadian debate, right? So if you're coming at it from the perspective of the Competition Bureau, you're for sure going to be in favor of that. Let's bring in United Airlines. Let's bring in American Airlines. I don't know, there are other global airlines that might be interested in doing Canadian to Canadian destination flights. The challenge with it, and people always get upset about whether it's telecommunications or banking or airlines, transport. We're a great, big, sparsely, weirdly populated country. So we have little bunches of population, along St. Lawrence Seaway, the 401, up into, Montreal. And then we have large stretches that are not populated. And the trade-off is we say, okay, we're going to give you guys exclusive service options, whether airlines, banks, whatever. Effectively, we're going to give you unbridled opportunity to do this, but you're going to have to use your profits from the flights you have from Montreal to Toronto and Ottawa to Montreal to subsidize our ability to fly people to, Quebec City, Trois-Rivières, to Saskatoon, and none of those new American competitors or whatever are going to do that. They're just going to, all that money's going to go to the bottom line, and they're not going to sink a dollar into getting people from, Saskatoon to Trois-Rivières. And so you kind of go, well, what's the trade-off here? And do we erode our ability to service all but the largest destinations if we open it up to foreign competition? Because then our guys go, well, we're not going to subsidize uneconomic lines then. And that's the big trade-off. And it's the same thing with phones. If you're going to build a network in rural Canada, then, but if you open it up to foreign competition, they say, well, why should we bother? So that's the trade-off, our geography, our history, and our population trend.
So you're kind of making the case where, as much as the Competition Bureau, because it's an easy thing to suggest, as you said, it's simply this is not going to happen. Don't hold your breath waiting for this to happen.
Well, it's a tough thing, I always, I do think that there's a logic to all of that because of the nature of the country. But you also don't want to give people license to screw you over and screw you around over and over and over again. And, at some point, service levels drop so badly that you go, well, to hell with it, man. Sorry. We will take that away. But I think in the long run, it would serve us poorly. I think it would be really tough. There are going to be a lot of people in Kelowna who won't be able to get in and out. There'll be a lot of people in, the Saguenay, they won't be able to get in and out. That would be the consequence ultimately.
All right, we leave it at that. Scott, always appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, man.